I'm Lucas. This is my life story. I'm going to be talking about how I used to be a sexist bomb. At the age of 14, I was suicidal. I had lust. I had every addiction under the sun. And now I've made my clients $60,000 LTV, if not more. I've earned thousands for myself, and I'm planning to fly out to Malaysia and change my life. So, how did I get here, you may ask? I'm going to be telling you my complete story from when I was about 13, 14 years old to today at the age of 18. Now, to be honest with you, this is like my 10th take of this video, some shit. This will be the most authentic, raw video you will ever watch of me, if not the most authentic video you'll ever watch, period. And if you're not here to watch it for like half an hour, don't bother, okay? I've really thought through a lot of this. And yeah, it's funny because there's so many events I want to cover, but I don't even have enough time to cover it. So we're going to start the story when I was 13 years old. 13? About 13. I was getting into middle school. I was just starting middle school. And unlike most people, I was acting very different. Why? Because by the time I entered middle school, I've already watched a lot of videos on, how shit the school system is. And, all this yap about feminism and all that. And this was really just, the setup for this story. And it was funny because at the start of this story, well, maybe not the start of middle school, but like the second year of middle school, I used to be part of this thing called Men Going Their Own Way, MGTOW for short. If you guys are in the manosphere, if anyone's in the manosphere, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I was in a Reddit MGTOW community. I think they might be banned now, but I used to be part of a MGTOW community. And the reason I was in that community was because I genuinely got sick of women. And it's honestly very ironic because I dealt with like two bitches on Snapchat, and that had me really depressed. Honestly, that's basically what happened, which was pretty funny. But yeah, I was part of MGTOW, right? Men Going Their Own Way. It was a very depressing movement. For example, I remember one Reddit post, they were looking through the Titanic and they were asking themselves, like, why should men die for women? Why do we help you if we get nothing in return? And it's, in all honesty, even today, I see this issue as one that's very philosophically and morally challenging. But I'm not going to be talking too much about, politically sensitive issues today. I'm going to be talking more about me and the life lessons I generally took from all of this. But after my MGTOW phase, I've had people in my middle school going up to me just saying, "You're a sexist guy, Lucas, you're a sexist guy." And it really sucked because at this point, the difference between me and most people is I just got my phone, number one, because I got my phone relatively late. And number two, it was actually that people had two main forms of communication, which was Instagram and Snapchat, and I had neither of them as a middle schooler, which was really bad. If I'm blinking weird or I'm talking weird, it's not even 5 a.m. I'm fucked on sleep, by the way. Anyways, we don't edit our stuff out here, okay? So, I dealt with lust, I dealt with video game addiction, I dealt with self-doubt, I dealt with depression, anxiety, I dealt with everything. Shit mental health. And I was 14 years old when all of this happened. I had no friends, no prospect of getting a girlfriend, And the funny thing is I still don't. But but yeah, no prospect of ever getting a girlfriend. Um which is fine for that age, but you know, I never really even texted girls, to be honest. At that point, I haven't texted a girl in. Well, I spoke to a girl at like a year 8 camp or something, but with the exception of that, like, I just haven't talked to a girl in literally like years by text or in person. Or like, I would genuinely. I'm so not used to the girls at that point that I would genuinely kind of get stressed when I start a conversation with a girl. But anyways, very shit time, right? I confided to my parents about, this big problem with like the mental health. I need help. I used to cry every single day, and they did absolutely fucking nothing. Okay? They didn't even take me seriously. They thought, my mental health was a joke, I guess. And I almost killed myself. And the funny thing is, even when that happened, they still did nothing about it. They shrugged it off like I wasn't even important. And it was really sad to see, because it taught me my first lesson that I want to teach you guys. And it's to not listen to people who aren't successful. Because the truth is, I listened to them, right? I was finishing grade 8 piano at the time. I was starting to really pick up at maths. Like the year after, within the next year or two, I was about 3 years ahead of my curriculum. And even to this day, I'm, very ahead in maths. I listened to them. I was like that, perfect Asian cousin. I would get good grades, right? I listened to them, but it just wasn't enough. And it wasn't that I didn't listen to them enough, it's that it was rigged from the very beginning. The very goal was to stop listening to them. And that's what I didn't understand until a bit later on. But I'm here today, which, spoiler alert, it means I actually didn't kill myself. And in truth, the only reason I didn't kill myself is because I discovered self-improvement. I discovered Hamza. Now, if you know Hamza, you would know that he's a self-improvement guy. He does more like personal branding apparently nowadays, but he's a self-improvement guy in like 2022. I followed him when he had like 300K followers, right? So relatively early on. He was a pretty small guy. And I just began my self-improvement and journaling. And it was, well, let me clarify. I discovered Hamza. I started watching his videos. And this was when I entered the rabbit hole. Hamza, David Goggins, Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, right? Now, this is not the red pill one. This is not the red pill rabbit hole. Andrew Tate, Myron Gaines, all that shit, fresh and fit, and none of that. This was the self-improvement rabbit hole. And I watched videos and watched videos and watched videos. And ironically, it created this weird type of tension in me. This, like, knowing where I am, but at the same time knowing where I could be. And this was when I snapped. July 18th, 2022 was the first day I ever started journaling. It was when I started making my bed. And it's funny because I still make my bed today. My bed is made, as you can see, well, not made too well. I'm going to fix it up in a second. It's just like creases, but it's not like all over the place. But it was when I started self-improvement, right? This was when I started cutting out video games. And cutting out video games was a very big thing, right? Because, later on, actually, when I moved to Sydney, I got so much freedom that I actually had to deal with the addiction again. And it really showed me how big a difference it made, right? And, I stopped watching YouTube for fucking 2 billion hours a day. and that helped me a lot, right? And just doing a removal and addition process, right? And this was when I joined Adonis Gang. This was about like October. I think it's October 11th, 2023, right? So it's actually been over a year after I started self-improvement, right? Finally joined this community. It was actually only days after the community got launched, Adonis Gang, right? And not much happened. I spoke to some people. I met some people in my city, right? And then I joined Adonis School. This was my first ever investment. Now, there was actually only one lecture I ever went to due to my time zone. But this lecture would become very important for me. This was the Airbnb lecture, the traveling lecture, right? How to book travels and book Airbnbs. And it's funny because I use these skills to make the plan for the future, the Malaysian arc, but I'll be talking about that later. But anyways, I joined the school, I started networking with some seriously big entrepreneurs, right? They're doing like 5 figures a month at this point, right? And I mean, Adonis School is good, but at that point, I was still at $0 a month, right? And at this point, I actually work with a YouTuber. Now, I won't say who he is because genuinely, he broke contact with me and I don't know what happened to him. He could have fucking died for all I know. And I really mean that. And so I'm not going to talk about it. But what I will say is I got paid $3 for fuckloads of work. And then not long after that, right, I actually hopped on a call, my first ever call, with a 50K a month entrepreneur. It got my ass humiliated. Genuinely humiliated. He told me, I'm delusional, right? He told me that, he didn't say that I couldn't do it because, people who are successful wouldn't say that. But he said that I have to lock in. I have to get my fucking head straight. I have to know how the game works before I fucking play it. And I look like a guy trying to, go into a car race with a bicycle, basically. And he told me to lock the fuck back in. And, it's very harsh. Well, it's not harsh advice, but it's very honest and harsh advice in a sense. And a lot of people get discouraged, but not me. Okay, I'm not one of those people. I actually took this call at midnight, and I remember sitting in front of a rock at 12:30 a.m. looking at the fucking street lights right next to my train station, close to my house. I'm getting very detailed here, but I'm just making sure I'm not bothering the people next to me. But I was just like, this is not the end for me. This is not the end of the road. And, I thought back to when I was depressed. And actually, there's actually something else that I wanted to talk about. Just to add on, I guess. In the time that I was actually depressed, in the same year, not the same year, but the same year I was having a very bad rut, it was the same year that another person in my cohort took their own lives over the same issue. And my school covered it up. And it really, I guess I just wanted to reiterate this lesson, like randomly. My video is all over the place, but I guess I want to reiterate this lesson. Don't listen to people who aren't successful. Don't listen to people who don't want the best for you. Okay, because it was then I kind of realized, well, not, after the call, but after my rut, that my school doesn't want the best for me. My parents don't know what the best for me is. And I didn't have any friends to talk to, right? But anyways, back to that moment. I'm getting told that, I'm a delusional bum, right? I'm not that I'm a bum, but I'm delusional. And I'm just really grateful that I actually had the strength to take that advice in and then absorb it, I don't know, it's funny because low-key my self-improvement kind of came in clutch there. Because if I had bad mental health and that hit me, yeah, that would not be good. But as I was saying, I had self-improved and, you know, I get told I'm delusional and, all that. But I persisted, right? And I continued to improve myself. And as an extra side note, I'll tell you that the biggest improvement in my life is not like getting rid of video games. It's getting friends. Having friends is so important. And in my circumstance, reducing exposure to my own parents. But I'll talk more about that in a second. And well, obviously, I don't want to talk about that in too much detail. But anyways, a few months later, I made my first real sale. It's like $180, very small money, right? But very soon I found out that you can't just ghost someone after you pay them, right? After they pay you. So I under-delivered, and then, later I got forced to refund. And about the same time, I started realizing something about Hamza. This guy's fucking contradictory, not controversial, contradictory. He contradicts himself. He says one thing one day, another thing the other day. Right? He's just yapping. Anything for the views, bro. And when I started realizing that, I actually started to not watch Hamza. And I started switching to Alex Hormozi, Iman Gadzhi, and Charlie Morgan, right? Charlie Morgan a bit later on. But Iman Gadzhi especially, and a bit of Alex Hormozi as well. I still had people like Jordan Peterson. I said I found the truth about Hamza, but I realized Jordan Peterson had a fucked up mental state, not gonna lie. It was just kind of like a switch in where I get my information from like a personal, from a self-development standpoint, more into a money standpoint, right? My throat's fucked right now. I've been yapping, bro. But after that, I got more sales. I closed a deal and I just got like 500, right? And then I got paid another 500. And and it's very funny because all of this was last year. It was like a year ago, like less than a year ago, and then I got like 500 after 500 after 500. And then there's one thing I wanted to talk about last year, because in all honesty, I have a lot of things to say, but last year was a crazy year. Okay. And the reason is because my parents really just didn't want me to win. And when I say that, I mean it. They did everything they could to stop me. They wouldn't let me go on my computer for no reason other than they think I might work on my business. And the truth of the matter is, I got desperate. I started working late at night. Started working after my parents fell asleep. I would grind from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. as efficiently as I could so I could get my sleep in. And sometimes I would be sitting in my bedroom alone at 1 a.m. looking at the Malaysian Airbnb, fucking dreaming about what I could have. That's what I gave a shit about. That's what I cared about. And, especially going into my exam period, they dragged me up. They didn't listen to anything I said. And, this is something I still think about a lot today. And the reason I think about this a lot today is that if they were my parents, why won't they ever listen to me? And, I'm telling you this entire story because, I want you guys to know me, but I want you guys to also know my experiences and my lessons. And, I'd love to say that I have like a very clear lesson for what to do here, but the truth is I don't. But I'll tell you what I think. What I know happened is that my parents wouldn't ever listen to me. My parents have told me that, they only care because, if I didn't, I can't, I've had my parents go up and tell other people that, I'm a waste, I'm not useful. And it's all about utility and being useful and things like that. And, you know, I've gone up, I've heard my parents say that, you know, they've gone to me and they're like, Lucas, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, are you a family member? Are you useful? It's all about being useful, all about being, it's just so stupid. And I guess that goes into another lesson. And I think it's more than one lesson, but there's a lot of things I want to say about this lesson going into this period. Because the truth is, year 12, my final year of high school, my graduation year, was the most painful year of my life. And I know I'm going to face a lot of tough shit this year, but this will be nothing. Because the fact of the matter is, simply because they started my business, they loved me less. And I want you guys to take this lesson home. And this is not a business lesson, okay? This is not a money-making lesson. This is a life lesson. No matter who it is, no matter how close they are to you, if they don't care for you, then you are not obliged to care back. There are exceptions. But I'm not a parent. I'm a kid, right? If a parent doesn't, if a parent acts in a pathetic manner, in an unacceptable manner, I don't think I should be obliged to just keep giving and giving and giving. That's my first lesson. And my second lesson is tied to my first lesson. It's about giving. You have to be ruthless. You can't give too much to people. Because here's the thing, my last year of high school, aside from being bullied by my own parents, essentially, I'm also bullied by a lot of people at my school. I've had people, and they won't say it's bullying, by the way. They will never say it's bullying. After I win, before I win, they're never gonna say. People make posters about me. People spam comments in my videos for months straight. That's just fucking dedication at this point. But the thing is, you can't you can't be nice to some people. And, if you go through this business journey, you're going to think that, I'll say it's very stupid to believe that everybody's a nice guy. It's the stupidest thing. Okay? You're dumb if you believe that. Or you're ignorant and you just haven't seen it. Lucky you, but please don't just randomly trust everybody. That's another lesson. And I'd say I learned a lot from my parents not listening to me. And I still remember actually my decision of moving to Sydney. It originally wasn't even mine. Because they didn't care where I wanted to live, to be honest. They only cared about what they wanted. And, you know, yeah, they're selfish, of course they are. And, you know, they didn't care about what I wanted. They didn't care about where I live. You know, I had a better place. My friend agreed with me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they paid for it. So that's all that matters. And it's weird that I brought this up, you know, like as I said, my videos all over the place. My ideas are kind of everywhere as well. But the truth of the matter is, you know, going into business, you're going to have a lot of business problems, but you're going to have a lot of personal problems. Okay? And, you know, you're going to think that, you know, your parents, you're going to think that not earning money is difficult. But I'll tell you, if you want to persist in your business journey, not making money is the least of your problems. You know, I've had my parents, like, I'll say this. I know for a fact that when I drop out, okay, when I choose to be fully successful, when I fully lock in, my parents will not treat me the same. Never again. And my friends will, well, my friends will treat me differently, but I think it will be in a different way. But in my case, I know my parents will never treat me the same. And it really hurts to think that. But, you know, I could live in the past and dwell on that. What the fuck? It's 5 a.m. Some guy just dropped that shit. But as I was saying, I could live in the past, or I could choose to have a better future. And when I flew to Sydney, I realized I wanted a better future. I realized a lot of things. Whenever my parents aren't calling me, I'm happy. Whenever I did shit without telling them, I'm happy. Truly happy. You know, even, you know, I'll say, like, I'm in Sydney right now. I've been given so much freedom and I've used it pretty badly. But even so, I'm still happy. And it's because, you know, whatever's suffering, it's of my own choice. And I guess that's another lesson for you guys. Move out of your hometown. Okay, move out of your hometown. But it's been the craziest few months. I work with Darius, right? It was a production set for Raced and Heme. You can search him up. Biggest e-commerce guy and biggest e-commerce infopreneur in Singapore. I made a deal with a company that is on Business Insider. They do 25K a month and manage 30 employees. I helped my client make $60,000 LTV, right? It's been fucking crazy. And all of this was possible because I broke free from them, my parents. Yeah. And that's the truth. And I guess that leads to perhaps the most important lesson. And it's that, you know, throughout all of this, you know, I'll tell you this. After I committed to wanting to win, after I put my heart to winning, I went through more hardship than I ever could have imagined. And I've gone through more hardship than I ever would have faced before. 1,000,000 times over. The reason I used to be depressed is because I lived a life that I didn't want. I simply existed. And after that day, I've never been depressed. I've been very sad, but I've never been depressed. And I know that for a fact. I've suffered 1,000,000 times more suffering. I would literally start working at 10 and work till 1 a.m., fall asleep, Wake up at 7, live on 6 hours sleep, and hope for the best. Day after day after day after day. I would make sure I wouldn't make a single noise in case, one of my parents had a midnight toilet break and they would hear me. All right. I would make sure that, I would hide my computer under my bed, right? And then put it in the cupboard, then put my charger, hide it under my bed. And then, like this, I hid everything from them. Okay. And it's a stupid cat and mouse game because the fact of the matter is, my very own parents do not care, right? They didn't care for me when I wanted to die. They didn't care for me when I wanted to win. And like, my story isn't even about fucking hating them, but like, the fact of the matter is, you have to put your own pursuit of freedom above like anything. If you're not willing to do that, you're not gonna win, and that's too bad for you. And one more lesson. Perhaps I've already talked about this. It's that give me a second, I'll remember it. One more lesson. I actually, there was like a function in my phone to change the recording. But anyways, the final lesson is that you'll face much more personal problems than you ever will business problems. Okay? And whether that breaks you or not, if you are aligned, it will not break you. I trust me. I'll bet my life on that. It will not break you. But if it doesn't, it will. The reason I was depressed was not because of my parents. I'll tell you, my parents treated me 1,000 times worse after I started my business. Okay, a million times worse after I started my business. People bullied me a million times more. I got put through 1 billion times the pressure, but I continued to thrive. And the reason I didn't thrive before is because, yeah, I had no friends. Yeah, I was depressed. But that wasn't the main reason. The main reason was because I was just existing. I wasn't living. I had no reason to exist. And now I do. And now, at the same time, I'm away from my parents. I've broken revenue months. I still have money on their way to my bank account. And I still have, I'm working on like a 4K offer, right? Which is the highest ticket offer I've ever made. And I have a plan, right? The final part of my story, I guess, is what I'm going to do for the future. First of all, is to drop out of uni, because I'm in uni right now, and I'm going to be building in public, and I'm going to be dropping that fuck out, right? If you've seen Minnow Lee before, he dropped out, right? Same here. I'm going to be dropping out too, right? Then I'm going to have my Malaysia arc. I'm going to fly to Malaysia. It's a low cost country, right? And I'm just gonna lock in. All right, we're gonna be building missions, and we're gonna be building companies, right? We're gonna be changing the narratives of this whole entire world, and I'm gonna change this world one step at a time. Because here's the truth: I've already gotten from depressed to making my clients 60K a month and working with world-class clients. Okay. And I can continue to push forward, continue to be better, and continue to win. So if you want to follow me with my journey, you can come along with me, watch my videos, right? Like, follow, become a fucking client if you want, pay me 4K. I don't know. I really don't give a fuck. If you're fucking bored and you don't want to stay with me, yeah, that's fine as well, I guess. But that's my future. This is my story. I hope you got to know me a lot better than you did at the start of this video. And yeah, I'm really excited to, well, I hope you watch my other videos too. I'll be dropping a lot more, let's say, more edited professional type videos. But I'm Lucas. I'm very happy to meet you. So yeah.